Hello everyone, welcome to another video here on Real Over Religion. It is I, Johnny Lee, and we are back again with another one. I hope everyone is doing well. I hope you're staying safe in this crazy world that we live in. I just wanted to reinforce some ideas looking at what's going on in our news today and continue to justify my same talking points on this channel. Nothing really is going to change here, but I'm trying to help the next generation, those of you that are looking at the uncertainty of the world. And what I give on here is my best advice based on the evidence, what we can see with our own two eyes. So I'm saying to you today that the unpredictability and the uncertainty of life is exactly why you should not bring children into the world. As you know, Iran and Israel are at war with each other. And I wanted to do some research to see what the death tolls are. According to reports, at least 20 children are reported to have been killed in Iran by an Israeli strike on a residential building in Tehran Shahid Sharman district. The Iranian government spokeswoman stated that 45 women and children have been killed overall. In Israel, it says that a missile hit in Bat Yam, I believe that's pronounced, killed 6 people, including 2 children, on June 15th. In Tel Aviv, or its outskirts, strikes have claimed the lives of an 11-year-old boy and a 9-year-old girl, as well as an additional 10-year-old boy, per Israeli and international outlets. In total of civilian deaths, it says that in Iran, the total casualties are roughly around 639. In Israel, only 24 civilians. But the sad part is that children are caught up in the middle of something that they can't even comprehend at that age. The uncertainty and unpredictability of life is the reason why you should not bring children into the world. Here you have 2 nations that believe in 2 different gods. And they are the most popular gods in our era today, Yahweh and Allah. Neither one of them are intervening in what's happening in these places. It is human beings that is causing war, government entities that are causing these wars, and the civilians are the ones that are paying the price for the decisions of the few. So if Yahweh and Allah is not intervening on behalf of these civilian lives, what makes you think Jesus is any different? Let me remind you that America suffered its own attack, 9/11/2001, where it claimed nearly 3,000 lives. Now, whether you believe it's conspiracy or the government was behind it or it was really a terrorist attack, I don't care. The fact of the matter is that nearly 3,000 lives were claimed that day. Many of them were just going about their everyday life. Fathers, mothers, children, lives changed forever. In a quote-unquote Christian nation, where was God at? on 9/11, 2001. I have learned that human beings do not learn from history. Human beings are irrational by nature. We don't learn from history because we have written history, but yet we still repeat it. We can look at tragedy, look at people make bad decisions, and we still will do the very thing that we know is detrimental to us. Myself included. I don't have any vices like alcohol and drugs, but food is, I would say, is an escape for me. And I know it's bad for me, but I still go and eat the things I like. I'm trying to get more control of it now. And the only reason I'm doing that is because I want to improve my quality of life. Not that I necessarily care whether I die or not, but I do care on how I'm going to die. And I don't want to go out with bad complications. But my point is, we as human beings are irrational by nature. It takes discipline. It takes work to make wise decisions. And there is no point of arrival. There's always the temptation to go off the rails and do something destructive. But in the case of religious belief, we can clearly see that it doesn't help or it doesn't work. It doesn't fix the uncertainty of life. It might help you cope with the uncertainty of life by you believing in an afterlife or believing that there's a God who cares. But I'm looking at the reality of what is, and I'm seeing that there is no love. There is no loving and merciful God that cares. Whether you believe in Yahweh, Allah, or Jesus, neither of them are intervening on behalf of those who believe in him, or them rather. So when you observe this, what makes us think that it is a good idea to bring children into the world anyways? Well, yes, we are programmed to do this. By evolution, we are programmed to do one thing, and that is to survive. If you really start to look at life for what it is, that's all we're really doing. It's about survival. That's it. And people are willing to survive by any means necessary, even if that means destroying the life of another. Men, women, and children, it doesn't matter. I must survive. My seed must survive. But what people don't consider or realize or even think is that all of us are going to eventually go extinct. Humanity will eventually go extinct. According to what the scientists have said, 99.9% of other species that have ever existed on Earth are no longer in existence. So what makes you believe that the human being will be an exception to that? Eventually, climate change or an asteroid, we have one coming in 2029 that they've been talking about for years. I remember this as a teenager, them talking about this day coming in 2029. And I thought then that, oh, that's so far away. But now that's literally less than 4 years away. Now, from what I've heard, it's not a direct hit, but it's coming real close to the point to where I believe you can see it passing Earth. But from some of the reports I've read is that when it's going to pass us this time, and then in 7 years it's going to come back again, and that may be the direct hit. So humanity is eventually on a course to coming to an end. So what legacy is there that you're fighting so hard to keep bringing into the world? I don't understand that. I know why, because religion has lied to you and told you that God has a plan for life. But when we look at reality, there is no plan. There is no rhyme or reason at all. Children are victims of people's decisions. I think it is a horrible crime when children are born to irresponsible parents. And when they're born to irresponsible parents, they become a product of their environment unless someone or something intervenes to get them out of that situation and save them while they're still in their formative years. I believe that, well, for one, I believe that all humans should go extinct, but since people are going to continue to have kids, what I have advocated for is that there should be a license for parenting. There should be income requirements. There should be a check on their mental state. All of that stuff. But the reason why the system won't do anything like that is because they need to feed our prison system. We need problems to exist to profit off of those problems. If we actually fixed problems, a lot of jobs would disappear. It's corruption at its finest. Understand, these governments are not trying to fix problems. In fact, they want problems to exist. The companies that create the weapons that are used in war, they need war to exist. And humans will find any justification. The governments will lie to you to get you on board. But the reality is, this is about money. This is about resources. That's all human history has ever been and done. So I'm asking you, those of you that are advocates for bringing kids into the world, why would you do that? Let's forget about just the outside influences. Just the fact that you're gambling on the health of your child. You don't even know if you're going to have a healthy child. Even as good as modern science has become, you still cannot guarantee the health of your child. I have run into so many women in my line of work with children that have autism or some type of mental deficiency. I remember going to a Christian church once where a little girl was wheelchair bound, had no ability to walk. I'm not sure what the condition was called, but we were talking to the parents, and the parents said, we just tell her that God made her special. And I just looked at that poor little girl sitting in that wheelchair, and it broke my heart. And at the time, I was a believer, and I'm thinking to myself, they come here every week. Why is God not healing this little girl? The Bible says Jesus can heal. Why is she not getting healed? But when you believe in God, you have to lie to your children and tell them that God made them that way. And then they have to exist believing that this God who is capable of healing and doing anything, he could have made me normal, but instead, he made me disabled. Imagine what that psychologically does to a child. But we as humans rationalize this. It makes sense because God is never wrong. Even though you've never seen him, you've never heard his voice, you've read about him in a book. You read about him in the Torah, the Quran, the Bible. You've never seen God. Faith is based on belief. It's not on evidence. But you're willing to put your children in the way of this stuff because you believe in an afterlife, a heaven and a hell. You're willing to gamble on the life of your children. And these kids, these civilians' lives that have been taken in Iran and Israel, again, these people are enemies because of religious belief. You think that Israel and Muslim nations are ever going to coexist? Have you not read the Hadiths and what it says about the Jews? Go read it. You're never going to get peace in the Middle East as long as those two ideologies exist. They cannot coexist. And it is a shame that humans have divided themselves up like this into religious beliefs. We are humans at the end of the day. I didn't choose my complexion. You didn't choose your complexion. I don't get to choose the shape of my nose, my lips, my hair. You don't have any control over any of that. And people will hate you over something you have no control over. That's the madness of the world. I just don't like you because you look different than me. I don't like you because you believe different than me. I don't like the way you talk. I don't like, this is the way of the world. And this is the world that you want to bring your children into for what? What's the benefit? Don't you think that the parents of these deceased children thought that God had a plan for their children too? When they brought them into the world, they thought that they were going to grow up and go to college and go to school and do all this stuff. Their lives are over with now. What's the overall plan for that? God brought them into the world to be destroyed by war, to bring them to heaven when he could have just brought them to heaven in the first place? No, he wanted them to go through war and suffer first. For what? What is the benefit of an 11-year-old and a 9-year-old dying through war to get to heaven? What's the logical benefit for that? How do you rationalize that in your brain? But that's what happens when you've been brainwashed and convinced that everything that happened, God has a plan for it. That is what helps you sleep at night. Because there is no logical explanation for how that benefits a child. It doesn't. But in order for you to still keep believing in God and divine protection, which I don't understand how anyone could even believe in divine protection. If he's not protecting children, why is your life more important than theirs? Why is your life more important than children? Starving children or children born with defects? Why does God see you more important than them? I guess you're just his special child, huh? The uncertainty of life is exactly why you should be mitigating your suffering, reducing your suffering as much as possible. Because what do I say on this channel all the time? Life is suffering. Just to exist, you're guaranteed to suffer. It's not if you're going to suffer, but when. Suffering is a part of life. So the best thing that you can do for yourself is to reduce as much of that as you can. And the way that you do that, one of the ways, is that you don't bring kids into the world. Because as a parent, I don't know what it's like to be a parent, but I imagine if I was one, I would be anxious every day over my children. I never want them to leave my sight because look at the way of the world. You send your kids off to school, like what happens in our country now, school shootings are an epidemic. So you send your kids off to school thinking that you're going to see them, and then some kid flying off the handle shoots up the school, and it's one of your kids. What is the benefit? What is the ultimate plan for that? What did God have in store for that to happen? My heart aches for children that are born into situations that they have no control over. There are little girls right now underage, small children. I've seen documentaries on this. Taken in these Asian countries and in Mexico, Colombia, where they're being kidnapped and sold. And you know what happens to these little girls. And yet you believe, I'm talking to you believe that a loving and merciful God who sits on his throne is watching this, and he has a plan for it. You as a human being would not stand aside, at least I would hope not. If you saw an adult try to go after a child in public, you mean to tell me you're not going to intervene? You're just going to let that stranger exercise his free will and have his way with that child? Or are you going to intervene to try to protect that child? I think most people would. But yet your God, who is the epitome of love, capable of intervening, chooses to kick his feet up and watch it happen. Watch the little girl get traumatized, and then in most cases, they get murdered. They're either murdered, some of these weirdos that are going around snatching up kids in public, or the ones that are sold, they're going to be used by the next guy, and the next guy, and the next John, and the next one. Traumatizing these little girls for the rest of their existence. But you want to convince me that life has meaning and purpose and God has a plan. You know why you believe that? Because none of this stuff affects you and none of it bothers you. Because you have convinced yourself that God has a plan for all suffering. I remember my grandmother on my mother's side, may she rest in peace. But when 9/11 happened, because she was a religious woman, she said, well, God must have judged, they all must have been evil. That's the reason why they died in the way that they did. And bless her little heart, that's all she knew was religion. She had a hard existence. God was what they gave black people back then. That's all you had to hold on to in the midst of oppression. The promise of a Redeemer helping you, prayer and all that good stuff. But this is how religious people rationalize the things that happen in the world. Well, they must have done something wrong. It's even in the Bible where the boy that was born blind that Jesus healed. The Pharisees said, well, he must have committed some sin to be born blind. So that concept is not a new concept. Even in the book of Job, when Job was going through the suffering that he was going through, his friends told him, well, you must have done something wrong. That was the whole premise of that story. Even though by the end of it, we never ever understood why God played games with his life in the first place. But this is the mindset of most people, that if bad happens to you, you probably had it coming to you. God is judging them. If I died tomorrow, people would be saying that God judged me because of my channel and because of the things I say here. I don't care what people say after I'm dead. I'm dead and I'm not conscious of it. But these are the things that religious people will say about these tragedies. It helps them sleep better at night. It doesn't affect you until it does. And there's going to come a time, because let me explain something to you. Every nation, every empire eventually comes to an end. You might be living a comfortable life right now where you don't have to worry about missiles and war showing up at your doorstep, but eventually, all nations come to an end. Things evolve, things change. The greatest civilizations in the world that we read about are in history now. They've all succumbed to destruction. And when I look at society today and I see the instability of society, the way people think now, all you have to do is just look and see how people are. There is an inevitable end coming. And this is the world you want to bring your children to? Simply on the faith that God has a plan for them. Everyone who's ever had a child probably believed that their kid was going to grow up and be whatever it was, and they succumbed to sickness or tragedy of some sort. And if you're okay with gambling with the life of your children, your future children, all in the name of trying to pass your legacy on, which isn't guaranteed, then you need to ask yourself, why are you that selfish? Because children don't have a choice to come into the world. That's a you decision. And most people are just having kids nowadays just because they're irresponsible with their sexuality. You know, all the condoms in the world, but yet people still manage to bring accident babies into the world. Maybe some of you are accident babies and your parents didn't plan for you, and you reap the results of that because they didn't give a shit about your needs at all. You've had to struggle and go through all types of hardship to get where you are, living with trauma based on the decisions of other people. That's what life is. So I said, you know, the best thing I can do for my future generations is to not bring them here. And like I said, I'm not above reproach. I was going to have kids at one point. I was deeply rooted in Christianity. Just so happens it just didn't work out that way. I couldn't tell you why it didn't happen. I was married for 10 years. I don't know. Scientific miracle. But I'm glad I didn't, because it would have altered my life forever. I probably wouldn't even be here talking to you guys, honestly, if I had a child. And I'm not going to say why, but I probably wouldn't be here. But the point of the matter is that the world is uncertain. It's unpredictable. And because life is suffering, as I said, it's best for you to try to mitigate your suffering. And bringing a child into the world is going to increase your suffering because it's going to add anxiety to your life. You're going to worry about the life of that child if you care about him. And it also costs you more money. And resources are not unlimited. As we keep increasing the population, resources are going to become less and less. And when people run out of things, they're going to start to look to the people who have things. So while you think you have a secure life now, keep reproducing and watch what happens. And you start to see this in some of these cities where crime didn't used to spill over into certain areas. Now it is. Well, yeah, these people are outgrowing these poor areas, and now they're coming to the well-to-do people. This is what happens when you don't regulate the population. And this is just me in my perfect world. I think that there should be some control over how many children are brought into the world. If we were to keep this circus going, then there should be a number. You assess the amount of resources, and then you determine that you determine that accordingly. But we're not going to live in a utopia, and the world will eventually come to an end. And that is the reason why you should focus on, again, the things you love, things that you that make you happy without affecting the life of another child. If you love kids so much, adopt one. But as I've said, people that pretend to like kids, they like kids up until you bring up the adoption thing. Oh, I want my own kids. You just want a kid to look like you, to be like you, to share your values. You want to live your life through your children. But kids are autonomous. They have their own brain. And that's the reason why families have the problems that they have. Because they want to control the life of their children and turn them into themselves. If you really cared about children, go save some that are languishing in orphanages that have been forsaken because of irresponsible parents. But that's just my 2 cents. Ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate your support as always. Those of you that have left me positive comments, I thank you. I do read them, and you guys keep me motivated on speaking on this channel. Although I would love to talk about things on here anyways, but I don't like to put things up here just for the sake of doing it. I do it when I feel that it's useful. So, thank you again for your support. And remember, as I always say, that life is suffering, but death is mercy. And if they have to speak for God, they've already lost the debate. Until next time.